as some of you probably noticed, there were some changes in how local works in nullsec about a month ago, where CCP decided to take the local chat that we currently have in wormhole space and push that into nullsec. So you only appear when you actually speak in local, not any time else. And there was a change that was really well received by people doing hunting. Like, I started it just with the Blackout. I'm having a really great time, because when you jump into a system, before everyone could see you're there. There was like a big shining warning light, and they could immediately pull their drones and warp off and be safe. Pretty much before you were able to catch them or even warp to them. Some people still managed to do that, but I found it super hard and eventually gave up on it. And so I'm now really happy that it's possible again with Blackout. What we've seen is that redding has gone way down. So before there was way more redding activity, but in my opinion, if you can't catch all that redding activity, what does it matter to you from a hunter's perspective? So right now I'm rather happy. With Spoopy, we're currently staged out of a wormhole that has a nullsec static. So we're able to roll that and land in a completely different region, re-roll it until we find something where there's content within a 15 jump range or so. So you're able to travel there without having to go to 3, 4, 5 regions. But that is possible to do as well. Before we move to that nullsec staging wormhole, I was basically just traveling around with the Legion, basically circling around New Eden, circling, and so on. And what you do is you check Dotlan. We will get into that in a minute. And look for rats, and then just travel up, travel around, and see if you can catch anything. That will be something we will be looking into a couple minutes. First, one thing I'd like to talk with you is the importance of covops, or how you can fly with covops, or what you have to consider when you're flying non-covops ships. So what is covops? There are certain cloaking devices that you can have active while warping and while going full speed. So we'll be looking at that in my EVE client, which you should also see on the Twitch stream. All right, here's this magical device. You're seeing that it has a 0 maximum velocity modifier. The other cloaks have a velocity modifier. So for example, with the prototype cloak, you can't really move at all. With the improved cloak, you can go like 25% off your speed. And with the covops cloak, you can warp completely, warp around, travel around. And basically the only time you decloak and are visible on descan, which we will also come to in a second, is when you go through a gate, or when you're decloaking on your target, which you're trying to kill. And you see also in this list that it has a certain ship fitting restrictions. So you either have to go with a Sisters of Eve ship like an Astero, a strategic cruiser like a Tengu, Legion, or Loki. And there are also some other ships like stealth bombers, which are really nice. It takes a bit to train into, so it might not be your day one thing to do. So there are also options that you can take without being able to do covert ops cloaking. But if we look into this here, this one is my buyback char, which doesn't really have any combat capabilities. And you see that cloaking 4 is only a week away. So if you put that in, then do some traveling, do some twinking, find a nice fit, import that. The 7 days are pretty much over. There might be a bit more training involved based on your status, because you need to also have a ship to be able to fly that with. So for example, let's look here into the fleet tree, ship tree. In here, my alt has already the Amar Frigate 5 trained and can fly interceptors. And if I now wanted to do some fun with it, I would maybe go and train into the Purifier. Purifier and Hound, those two are bombers which you can use to also pretty much delete Myrmidons and with a bit of luck also take down Dominixes, which I think value at about 250 to 300 million fitted. You can take them down with a bomber, which is, I'd say, 80 to 100 million. You can check my killboard if you want to. I recently had a hound loss. All right. Yep. Those would be your first things to look at when you go for covert ops cloaking ships. And you can then progress them into the glorious T3Cs. Those strategic cruisers have a really good punch with their DPS, and they can use covert ops cloaking, so they're pretty well suited for doing this kind of blackout hunting. I have to admit, though, that's a rather long train, so put that on your idea list that you might later want to train towards. Let's see how long the training here would be. Yep, 50 days. So that might take a bit more time, so I'd recommend you start small, get a bit in touch with it, and if you enjoy the playstyle, then go for it. I can only recommend it. All right, so now we've been talking a lot about covert ops ships. What other non-covert ops ships are there? I would really recommend you, if you're going for non-covert ops ships, to go with an assault frigate, like this Retribution I'm showing you here. So once you have a Mar frigate or any other frigate to 5, it's a really short train, and we can look at some other ways to see how long a Rachel frigate 5 would be. So let's look here at the Galente. So here we see that training it up to 11, no, not up to 11, up to 5, would be like 12 to 14 days. So within those days, you can do you can learn how to fly the ship, how to position yourself, maybe find a buddy who is already doing some reading and learn how to position yourself before you then hop into the bigger battles. When you fly non-covert ops frigates, you have to keep in mind that you don't have the advantage of being cloaky all the time. So usually what you would do is you jump into the system, you really fast go check through the anomalies, which we will see how to do later as well, and then just try to walk to one and be really fast. But in this class, we will be mostly looking at how to do it in a slow, reproducible, and not so skill-heavy way. So I mean skill in ways of you being able to pull that off and not skill point wise. All right, so we've been talking about the changes of nullsec for a second, been comparing a couple ships. Do you have any questions at this point?
Yeah, isn't Loki better for hunting ships in terms of tech-free cruisers?
With the Loki, you can get a good chunk more of damage. I took the choice to go for Legion because I already had the skills. So the Legion, I think from what I've seen when we were flying together, they got the Loki up to about 50k EHP, while my Legion was dumpling around at 15 to 20k. The Legion is still super capable of taking down Ishtars, VNIs, and down. When you go up to Myrmidons and Dominixes, at that point, I would say stop with the Legion, go for a bomber. When flying a Loki, I'd say try it out.
Well, Loki is mostly used for PvP because it has bonus range for webs and scrams, but that's it.
Yeah, when I fly the Legion, I'm focusing more on newts. So I have 2 newts in my high slots that are then used to trying to kill down the enemy's shield boosters and such. So far, I haven't had a good experience with engaging in real PvP, so not just dropping on Reddit, but that's something I think I can learn over time and see eventually being able to pull off as well. I'll show you some footage later on some targets I dropped on, and also showing you how to stay safe with such rather expensive ships. Because my Legion and the other Lokis, I think, started at roughly 500 million per ship. You don't want to lose that 2 or 3 times a day. All right. More questions about ships? can do an early start with regular frigates as well. If you can't fly so much yet, then consider teaming up with other people. So some of you can scout, some of you can tackle, and then you jump all on the target together. So we covered some ships now. Next thing will be some preparation of our UI. I will show you how to set that up here on Twitch, and where you can see my EVE client, and basically show you, we'll recreate from a fresh start the UI setup I have on my main, and I will explain you all the details while we go through them. So if you want to do that too, you should now just undock with any ship, preferably one that has some cargo space. So not just a pod, but a real ship. Alright, so on my screen you see a regular basic overview. I have installed the, how do you call it, Sarah Sancha overview. So just don't go with the basic default overview, but install anything else. And have modified a bit to also show drones, which you will want to see on Dscan. A little few other tweaks I don't really remember. But if you have the default Sarah combat overview, that's a good start to go. So the first thing we need is the overview, of course. I'll close the chat and fleet as we don't really need that. You might want to open it later when you are together in the fleet. We'll just look for the solo stuff right now. So in the right-hand side corner, we have our overview where we see the enemy when we have them on grid. So I'll go for a friendly fleet now, so we see an actual other target. We'll see drones and all the other things, and we will also see there when possibly more hostile ships land on Mars. And we'll come to that later on how to also hunt hunters. So another really important thing is, it's basically your most important tool with that is Dscan. And you can open that big window, okay, that's a lot here, by pressing V. And if I see that correctly, yep, it has the Dscan in the left-hand top corner here, and I'll open the probe scanner as well. And I can do that with Command P for me. You'll have to figure out how to do it on your thing. But those are two important tools. We need the probe scanner and we need the Dscan. And for the Dscan, I want to take that out of the probe scanner for now. So I press this little symbol on top, so it detaches it from the probe scanner. So what I usually do is I have the probe scanner window in the lower left hand, so I see the system, have an overview where there are anomalies and such on, and have the Dscan on the right hand side. So somewhat like this. You see that here in PCMA we have a lot of stuff already undocked. I'll try to go to another system later, maybe to give you some more concrete examples. So one thing more. Depending on what you have with you, you also want to open your inventory. That can be important if you, for example, have damage or speed drugs with you that you want to take at a critical moment, just the moment before you decloak or so. So usually I take this inventory window, make it small and put it to the left here, and then I pre-enter the drug's name like Pyromancia. As we don't have any with us right now, it's not showing anything, but otherwise you will see the symbol here that you could just right-click and consume. And it's handy to have that here ready for you, so you're able to go for it a bit faster. Yeah. Here in the lower middle, you'd have your modules, so make sure you have enough space. And I think that's mostly it. Let me check on the video. Here. In this overview, in this pause at the video, you can see my overview in combat. So I have the D-scan in the lower right corner, I have the overview in the right-hand side, targets in the top. You can move them any way you want. And you can see here in the left-hand side that I have the inventory open with drugs. And in the lower part, you see the modules that you need to activate, hopefully, and overheat before you join the fight. The D-scan here in the lower right corner is also really important when you're actively engaging in combat. Push that V button again, so you see when other people are landing on you. Right now here in this screen, you see that there are 4 oracles, which I've seen before, and I was able to catch off one of them. So those 4 oracles are not a concern really here. But I'll show you one video later where actually an Orthrus appeared on D-scan, which told me then to just get the fuck out, because that Orthrus would have killed me. Another thing here, if you have drones with you, place them somewhere as well. I have local open here because I wanted to see if someone is speaking local, but so far my experience was that it's not really bringing any benefit apart from some salty people who have seen you anyway. All right, so we have talked about the overview. So right now, here you have my client again. That's how I set up my overview. And yep, so let's head over to, now one more thing about overview. When you pull that overview a bit to the side, you will see things like velocity and transversal velocity. Velocity especially is important when you are about to engage a rather fast target, for example, VNIs and Ishtars, that can go like 1 or 1.3K a second. And you want to know about their speed, how they change their speed, so you have a bit more advantage in your fight. Just keep that open, keep an eye on it, maybe pull down a bit the alliance and cooperation text so that it doesn't completely block your screen. And we will keep it on here for now.
How can I edit those columns?
You can do that through the overview menu with the hamburger menu. What I just do is I just pull the columns to be a bit smaller, just the same way you would do it in Excel. But yeah, I think in open overview settings and columns, yep, here you can say which columns you want to see. For example, I could remove the tech and remove the alliance and cooperation, because I don't really care about those things when I'm hunting others. So right now we have it rather small. We see the name, we see the ship type, and we see the velocity, which are pretty much the most important things, apart from the distance as well. All right, so we were looking at that for now. So next thing, any questions at this point? All right, next thing. We've opened D-scan in the lower right corner. We'll go through how to use that now. And what we'll try to do right now is figure out if we see any rating ship in any of those anomalies here. If we're not able to do that, we'll hop over a few systems later when we also look into how to using Dotlan. So basically, when we scroll over, I could have done that before, we see there are 2 MTUs, which are usually used for pulling together racks, so you're able to loot that easier, but no real rating ships. So what we'll try to do is we'll try to see if those MTUs are at any anomaly we're here with. Could be that they're just in deep space where we can't find them anymore. Could be that they're an anomaly. We'll find that out now. So we'll start from the point where you figured out which system you want to go to. We'll look into how to determine a good system later. And imagine you just jumped into the system. The probe scanner in the left-hand side will populate. You'll see if there are a bunch of anomalies. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the D-scan. which I think automatically updates when you jump into the system. So on the first moment, you have about 60 seconds until your initial jump-in timer deactivates. So that's 60 seconds of free clock, where you can start fiddling a bit with the dscan here. So what we would do first is we have an overall scan. We see two things here, those MTUs, which might be interesting. So what I want to do first is we see that orbit here in the left-hand side, to smallen that orbit, so I get a sense of how far that target is away. So we'll do that now. I'll drop it from 14 to 10. They're still on. So I'll drop down to 5. And they are gone. So they have to be somewhere between 5 and 10. So I raise it to 7. And there's my MTU again. So I'll go down to 6. It's still here. 5.5. 5.3. That's good enough for me. You could go down to 5.1, 5.2 or so, but it's enough for this example. So right now, we know that this MTU is somewhere between 5.3 and 5.0 AU. It's above 5.0 because we haven't seen it with a 5.0 dscan. So what we're going to do next is, in the left-hand side, you have all those anomalies. We're going to sort them by distance and then scroll down to our 5 to 5.3 range. And what we directly see is there's no anomaly within that range. So we won't be able to find that particular MTU. So what I'll do next, I'll increase the range again to see if I can find the other MTU. So here we have both MTUs again. All right, they are both within 9 AU. So we'll try to see if they're at anything below 9 AU and above 8 AU. So what I do next is, in the left-hand side, I see there are two anomalies which might be candidates for that. So the one at 8.99 and one at 8.73. So what I already did in the right-hand side corner with the dscan, I reduced the angle down to 5 degrees. What we're going to do is now check each of those anomalies if the MTU is in there. And to do that really easily, you can V-click the anomaly. That will change your view towards that anomaly and perform a dscan. Like this. All right, so what we see now, the MTU is not there in any of those systems. We'll try this again a bit later when we learned how to use Dotlan to identify rating systems. But as it looks for now, we weren't successful in finding anything. This will happen a lot to you, and you just get used to it, and you will be able to do such a dscan rundown within about 30 seconds. So those initial 60 seconds of cloak you get from jumping into a system, you can use to scan this first blob that's within your 14 AU range. Some systems are bigger and have more anomaly spots. At that point, you can then walk to the other anomaly spots and check if anything else is there as well. Speaking of dscan, once you've identified an anomaly that there's a target in, I recommend you to push it back up to 14 AU and 360 degrees, so you can later continue pushing the V button for dscan, so you're able to see if any ship is about to drop on you. Just remember, Cloaky and Recon ships are not on dscan, and that works in both ways. Questions about dscan so far?
What would be the case where you find the MTU at the combat side, but not the ship itself? Because most of the time, if the MTU is still there, but not the rating ship, he's already done the site. And as he warps off, the site despawns.
Yes. If he left his MTU in space and it's not an anomaly anymore, you can either use combat probes to still identify where the MTU is and eventually prepare a drop on a Noctis or something. Or if you're able to warp to the MTU, he's just finishing the site and then warping off before you're able to attack him. You can decide if you want to bookmark the spot of the MTU and wait there or later come back, because someone should be getting that MTU back later and you're able to catch another kill there. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Cool. So we were talking about how to pin down someone in a system. That was a bit out of order, but we're able to do that later again a bit easier. So we did the layout. Now we'll look at how to actually find systems with targets. So for that, I'll open Dotlan. Let me see if any more road talking in Fleet. Nope. For Dotlan, I'll put the link in Fleet. All right, so I want you to open Dotlan and then open Impasse on there. And now in the right-hand side corner here under Donate, I want you to select NPC kills. There are a couple options. You can also go for NPC kills Delta, but we'll go with NPC kills for now. And what this shows you is the amount of NPCs that were killed within the last 1 to 2 hours. This is because the actual data returned by the ESI AP takes 1 full hour and has a cache of up to 1 hour. So that data might be delayed of up to 2 hours. And sometimes you come there, no one's there anymore, and you just have to continue to another system. When looking at this map, I would not really consider anything below 50 red kills. Sometimes there are NPC reds, which do things as well. What you want to be looking is at systems who have like 70 or 100 or up kills, rating kills. Those have, in my experience, been VNIs or Ishtars or something else. If you have a system here like 9ZFH here in the lower left corner with about 250 kills, that could be a couple ships or already a dummy, or you might already be looking at a carrier. If you see a system with 2000 NPC kills, personally, I skip that because as a solo player, I'm not able to take down super carriers. You can still go in there and just check if there's any system, any ship there that might fit your combat profile. But from my experience, I haven't been able to get anything in those systems. So I'm usually looking at those systems that have about 100 or up to 400 NPC kills. What you can also check is the NPC kills delta. So what we see in here is how the number of NPC kills has changed over the last hour. So we see here our impulse pocket in the lower left has rather gone down. This might be a sign that they are wrapping up their rating activity. So if you're about to travel 15 or 20 jumps there, take that number into account. If you're just 5 or 10 jumps away from that system, go visit it anyway. All right, so what we're going to do next is travel over to 9ZFH to see if we're able to do the D-scan properly there. So any question about using Dotlan so far? All right. One more thing I want to show you with Dotlan. When you have those systems here, there's Dotlan aggregates some historical data as well. So what you can do is open the details of a system like 9ZF8. And in here you see stats for the last 48 hours. And what I find to be really useful is the NPC kills last 48 hours. So you can see if there are some patterns of people. For example, if you have one system where there's always one guy always raiding at the same day, and you see that 24 hours ago, or maybe 26 hours ago, he started and it went up, and then he continued until 12 hours ago, you have a pretty high chance that he'll be still doing his thing there. When you see like a huge spike that then stopped at like the 24-hour range, you can take that into consideration if you have a long travel to get to that system. As said before, if it's just a quick run over to that system, 3, 4, 5 jumps, then go visit it anyway. All right, luckily I haven't died there yet. So, for example, in this system, you see in the lower left that the anomalies have been spread out a bit. So once I travel through the systems, I push the V button for descan again and again and again to see if any new ships appear with the new anomalies. Doing that in a travel interceptor can be really fast, but you will be seen on descan. So just keep that in mind. But some people, they get scared, then they dock up, and 20 minutes later they do their thing again. So you can take advantage of that by just scouting those systems in an interceptor, let them dock up, and then you take your big guns over there before they undock again and continue their stuff, and then you wait another 5 minutes and drop on them. All right, so let's look at this system. Looks pretty empty in here. We'll travel over to that blob of anomalies. As you can see here, there are 3 major blobs of anomalies that we can check. We're here at the first. Now we travel to the second. There's again just an NTU. And now we'll travel to the third. See if there's anything interesting. And again, unfortunately, there's nothing at the moment. So we're a bit unlucky here in terms of showing you how to pinpoint someone on descan. But we've seen that a couple minutes earlier how to do that, and you can train that without any problems in here. So no one will be mad at you if you are sitting at the Sodio or so and play around with your descan to see if you can pinpoint others. If you want to make sure that you've done that properly, you can walk to the anomaly at 100 kilometers and just warp out again and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you were doing your thing there. Well, that is if you want to lie. If you just want to be honest and say, yeah, I've been training descan, do whatever. All right, so we've now looked at how to use Dotlan to identify targets. We've been looking at how to use descan. I really recommend you, when you want to try hunting, go play around with descan first. Learn how to use it, get comfortable, so you'll be in less of a stress situation when you actually find some real ships. I will show you a video that I recorded on how to do the positioning as well, because that's the next step we'll be looking at. So let me look that up. And yeah, let me dock in here. All right. I'll show you a video here where I've done some positioning preparation already. I'll just tell you that on voice for the moment. Once you figured out which anomaly someone is at, you usually just walk to that anomaly at 100 kilometers to see how the Ishtar or VNI or Myrmidon is moving. And when you see, for example, they're just doing a 30-kilometer steady orbit, you can pick some rec, walk to that at range to then be able to position yourself on that particular target. And what we see in this video now is I've prepared that warp-in spot already. You'll see in the lower bottom there's it says warp drive active, destination warp-in. And we'll see what happens from the moment when you warp to that warp. So earlier in this, before this video, I've been doing this preparation. You see on the right-hand side, there's an Ishtar. It has some drones out. Drones are really good indicator if they are actually reading. If there's an Ishtar without drones, that one's probably not reading and not being able to drop on. And on the left-hand side, you can see I've done the preparation with figuring out which anomaly it is before. And in this case, because I'm cloaked, I have all the time in the world. And in here, you can see that Ishtar, when I've been at the anomaly before, I've seen that it was just circling all the time. There are some other people which have more complex movement patterns where they change direction from time to time. If you want to be safer as a radar, consider not just doing the 30 kilometers orbit because that is super easy to predict. And with this Ishtar, I had to do some more intensive preparation in terms of alignment and positioning because it is already going at 1,000 meters per second. You can see me and my Legion in the lower with the capacitor thingy that I'm just going a standard 300 meters per second, but I have an MWD that I'm pulsing in a second to speed up as well. And what I did there was to basically move my ship first to a point. Yeah, I have to stop the video now. It's going to be happening a lot in here. So what I did before is I positioned my ship that it will be eventually close to the Ishtar. So with my warp disruptor, which has 1 point, I have an overheated range of 29 kilometers, which is pretty decent. It helps you a lot with positioning. You can go for a warp scrambler, which has 2 points and already also shuts down the MWD of eventual targets. However, in my experience, I learned the hard way that sometimes they have pretty good defenses. For example, if I attack that Ishtar here and it has a scrambler and a newt, it would be able, if I'm doing a lot of things wrong, to pinpoint me down and then reinforcements can just drop on me. Unfortunately, I had that happen with other ships. All right, so we're now at the point we decloaked. When you're using covert ops cloak ships, you'll have a short moment of covert ops cloak reconfiguration thingy. That's basically 10 seconds where the enemy sees you, but you can't lock them up yet. Usually you have all the time in the world, you can drop drones already, you can start overheating your modules and so on and so on. And once that thing runs out, you want to immediately then target your target, in this case the Ishtar. And we'll see if I do that correctly or not. But in here I'm already aligned in the right direction, so we're basically going into the same direction together. And once I started targeting him, I can click my modules already so that they will apply in the moment I acquire the target. So we'll see how that continues here now. Here, so what I did here is pulse the MWD early on to get a start in the right direction. Don't keep it running for too long because your target might slow down. Like he did in here, he immediately dropped down to 0 velocity. I would totally overshoot if I wouldn't then start slowly circling. You can use orbiting. If you can do it manually, I would suggest going for that. And in here you see it's a really easy takedown. You just apply your damage, you overheat, he comes in, And before the drones can really apply damage here, this ship is armor tanked. He's already dead. So here you can make a really good use of that element of surprise. Afterwards, I suggest you reload your weapons. If you're going with rapid light missiles like I'm doing here, they apply to cruiser down, I'd say. If you go for myrmidons or dummies, I'd say go for heavy assault missiles. The problem with rapid light missiles is they have a super long reload timer, like you see even here right now. So you're basically out of the fight once you go into reload. But on the good side, they apply really well during that time when they're able to shoot. So you want to apply a lot of damage in a really quick, short time to basically kill him off the field before he's able to do anything. You can supplement that damage if you take some drugs like the Pyromancer dose. Cool, so we've seen a real fight here in action. We've analyzed a bit how that works. Any questions at this point? I've been talking a lot right now. Give me some questions so I can breathe.
So like the Ishar going at like 1000 kilometers per second meter per second. Yeah, it isn't an issue for you to actually apply damage to him?
I apply less damage because in here the missiles I use, they have an explosion velocity. So the faster the target goes, the worse you apply. But with rapid light missiles, that's less of an issue as if I were using heavy assault missiles or, God forbid, torpedoes. If I were shooting torpedoes at that Ishtar when it goes with 1 kilometer a second, I would probably not apply any damage at all.
Can you link these missiles in the chat, please?
Yes, I'll link that in chat. So this is the rapid light missile launcher, which my ship I think can fit 5 or 6. The Tech 2 variant takes about 15 days of training time. You can go with the prototype Arbalest before that, which is 1 hour, so not really a lot. And the missiles you use with that, when you are in combat, I really suggest to go for a Kaldari Navy. And you can do some preparation before to see, to pick the right ammo type. So the right ammo type depends on 2 factors. That is 1, the reds that are present, and secondly, the ship that you actually target. So for this example, we'll look at the Ishtar. When you open that ship, under attributes, you can see the damage resists. So going for kinetic damage in here would be not such a good idea because it has huge shield and armor resist. Ishtars are usually shield tanked, so we want to abuse that hull. And in here, we're just shooting it, we'll continue through, we got the major thing done. And what we also want to do is we want to look at the reds themselves. I don't have any reds in here right now, but I'll show you a website. So here on Eve Uni, they listed the NPC damage types. And depending on the region, there are different reds. And you see, the latest moment you will definitely see the reds is when you're on grid with the enemy. If you're cloaked, you have all the time to reload your weapons somewhere else. And what you'll be looking at is here, for example, when we go for Serpentis, they do a raiding ship should deal kinetic and thermal damage and should be resistant to thermal and kinetic. When we're attacking an Ishtar, that's super fine because we're focusing on EM. We might take a bit more consideration if we're going into region where, for example, the Blood Raiders, which is Delph, I think, where they are already resisting EM damage. So in that point, we see it, the reds do EM damage and thermal. We'll compare that with the Ishtar, which already has a decent thermal tank, so they will probably tank it towards EM, which would hurt our application. So we want to switch for explosive damage, which has the least resistance. So do some little preparations. If you go wrong on that, it's not really a deal breaker. Just make sure you stay safe and they don't kill you. But picking the wrong damage type usually doesn't kill you. Crystal, you asked in Fleet on recommendations hunting without cloaky ships.
Yes.
I would say group up with someone who is able to push out a bit more damage, and you can do some scouting, for example, with an interceptor like a Malediction, or go with some ship like an Atron or so. It's way more intensive because compared to fleet scouting, because you're not just jumping 1 or 2 systems ahead and seeing if anyone's there, but you're actually able to do all those jobs I showed you right now yourself. So you can hop into a system, you can check the anomalies, you can walk around a bit. Now that I talk about it, I would say if you are expecting to be seen on D-Scan, then go with some T1 explode frigate, like in Heron, for example, that doesn't raise too much suspicion. You don't want to do scouting with a Black Ops battleship, for example. 1, because they're slow, and 2nd, because they're a huge threat if if your target is using D-Scan properly. You also have the options to just stay a bit behind, so not do the scouting job or the positioning task, but take anything else that is a bit slower and looks more like a threat, and just stay 1 or 2 systems behind, while the other guys of your little group, could be 2 people, could be 3 or so. We usually hunt with 3 or 4 people in Spoopy. Stay behind and coordinate with them when they got a positioning, when they are able to drop, and at that moment they'll tell you, hey, jump in and warp to me, and you land in time to get on the kill mail as well. I don't have a video for you to show that right now, but I'll put one out in the near future. Basically, at the moment when you can't fly covops, it's more difficult to do this thing solo. But you always have the options of teaming up with 2 or 3 people and just trying your luck.
Or running an alt, I would imagine.
Yes, you can do that on alts as well, but that takes a bit more effort to multi-box. I've tried that 1 or 2 times and wasn't really my thing, so I went for the covops way. All right. Yeah, when you fly explode frigates and jump into a system, there's still a considerable chance that they'll just dock up. So when you do that, mark the system where you've seen them, try to get there with something that, or no. When you get into a system with your explode frigate, check which side they're at, stay a bit in system, see if they warp off. If they don't warp off and just continue raiding, then call in your friends. If they warp off, then you can just either stay in system or leave it and come back a bit later. So just figure out where there are people, then basically give them the impression of not being a threat, and come later and smash them with a big hammer. All right, so we were looking at how to fly, how to actually do a fight. We've been talking about positioning, we've covered alignment, about drugs, about decloak and positioning. So in this video, I tried to kill an Ishtar with a Hound by bombing him and then applying torpedoes afterwards, which I totally failed. I lost my Hound at that moment. So when you fly a bomber, you also want to do some initial positioning. And you'll see this red sphere that shows where your bomb is going to detonate and where it's applying damage. And we'll wait here a moment until I did the initial positioning and launched the bomb. And you can see at my cloak in the lower bottom, there you will see the delay that happens when you're using a bomber. So this guy, you can already see he's going a bit more erratic, not just doing a 30-kilometer orbit, but having some more variance in it. That kind of movement makes it harder for you as a hunter to actually get into a good position and to kill him. If I were in a legion right now, that would be plenty enough space. So right now you can see we have, I'd say that's 20 to 30 seconds for the cloak reactivation. But you can see right now I didn't have any real delay on targeting him. So I think bombers have that drastically reduced to 0 or 5 seconds, and other ships are usually 10 to 20 seconds. But on the good side, you have all the time to test that in other places. With the Astero, I'm not sure right now. I'd have to look that up.
The covert covops cloak is basically 10 seconds, but it is reduced by the cloaking skill, 1 second per level. So at
perfect.
level 4, it is 6 seconds. For stealth bombers, you have 0 second delay, so you can start locking immediately.
Sweet. What skill was that, where you can reduce the delay?
The cloaking, which you need to use the covert covops device anyway.
Perfect. So you have that trained up anyway. Yeah, with the Legion, you're still at 10 seconds. All right.
But I mean, you cannot use that module anyway without training it, so.
Yeah. But usually at the moment you have a couple of seconds of time before they fuck off. What I've seen a lot is people using warp core stabs or MJDs. If that happens, it's fine. Just make sure you get off safe. What you can also do is when you're positioning on an enemy, you see his name and you can check his Z kill board to see if he's been using a lot of stabs, if his ships that he was taken down with were having MJDs, or if he has a super PvP kill board and you're not really comfortable with flying a bling as Loki right now, you might want to skip on that kill and look for easier targets. Just remember, when you are cloaky, you usually have all the time in the world. One thing to note with that, however, is there are more people who have alts that are picketing gates. So, for example, when you come into 9ZFH, there's just one gate. There's a pipe in front of it when you go up to IRE. You can place pickets there to see if someone is jumping through. And then you have all the time to dock up before they actually get into your system. So it might happen that you find a system where there's some decent rating activity, you get there, they're already gone. That happens from time to time, but overall you're still able to get kills, so just keep looking. As you've seen in that video before, I died. With a bomber, that's not too expensive. You're in the range of 80 to 100 million. Once you fly more expensive and bigger ships from the Legion or Loki, you're starting at about 500 million and can easily go towards $1 billion when you bling some modules. One of my best kills was when I was looking at some raiding ships and wanted to kill them, and then another Loki appeared before I decloaked, and I was able to take that down myself. I'll show you that in a video now. So that's some form of advanced blackout hunting where you find targets for the people and then maybe you already see them somewhere in system decloaked, or you wait until they drop on them. So here's a video where I wanted to kill a Gunswarm Myrmidon, but someone else got in before me. So at that point, I could just look and enjoy the show, because they were both out of targeting range for me. Otherwise, I would have been able to horn it. So you see, he was able to pretty easily take that down. And looking at this video, I need to reduce the volume first. Here I was able to kill an Oracle, and in another cut, there was a Loki that decloaked. So he was shooting the Oracles, he was already taking some damage from sitting still. And at some point I decided, yep, I'm going to decloak now and apply all my damage to that one Loki to get that Hunter kill. And it turned out to be 800, 900 million kill with some really decent loot. Which basically paid for a whole Loki, for a whole Legion. So definitely that's a thing you might want to consider as well. And keep in mind, if you see other hunting ships on D-Scan, they might be with you. All right, any questions to this point? All right, that sounds like a no so far. So there are some more things I wanted to pass along to you in terms of staying alive. In the beginning, you're not really comfortable with flying your ship yet, depending on your experience with it. So you want to stay safe first, because losing a legion really hurts. Like sometimes when I lose one of those legions, I say like, okay, I'm going to stop it for 2 or 3 days and then get back afterwards. You want to focus on staying safe first. And one thing that helps you with that is to use a disruptor and not a warp scrambler. So my fits, I usually fly with disruptors, except when I go for a bomber, they are rather cheap, which I can afford to lose. So I'm able to do a scram there as well. A scram can shut down MJDs. A warp disruptor cannot. But the warp disruptor, as you've seen, when you overheat it, it gives you about 30 kilometers range, which is outside of the enemy's potential neutralizer range, out of their warp scrambler range, and out of their webbing range. So those are 3 things I've seen on actual raiding ships where they try to fight back a bit. But if you're able to stay out of that range and just point them, you have a rather easy time killing them and not getting totally punched in the face while you're trying to punch them. So that's one thing you can also start training with. Find someone, or maybe find a friend who's just raiding and say, hey, I want to train positioning a bit, and then walk to them and try to keep them at a 20 to 30 kilometer range. More than 20, because you don't want to get into their potential PvP module ranges, and less than 30, because otherwise you lose point and they are able to warp off. So those are some piloting skills you can use to get better at that part. And should the Alliance tournament maybe come back, you already have a pretty good training to actually fly with the AT guys. Yep. One more thing is know what you can engage. Sometimes that takes a bit of time and learning. Otherwise, there's also the small game channel on Slack where you can get some recommendations. Sometimes when I find a new target, I post in there, hey, I found this Orthrus, I'm flying this Legion. Should I do it or should I not do it? In that case, it was a clear no, because the author, not a really clear no, but a rather no, because the Orthrus would have been able to kill me, which it also tried later. When you're going with a T3Cs, you can pretty much engage any cruiser down. With Myrmidons, I don't have a lot of experience yet. I tried to kill a rattlesnake where I failed horribly. When you go with a bomber, I would not go for anything cruiser down, or at least with this configuration with a bomb and a torpedo launcher, because small things are too fast. You don't really apply well on the small targets, but taking down a Myrmidon or Dominix is rather easy with a bomber because they're just so shining bright targets. Your engagement profile extends when you're taking more people to the party. So it's always a good thing to bring some friends. You have more scouting capabilities, you're able to cover bigger regions, and you have more punch. And the cool thing is when you fly with 2 to 5 to 7 people, you're really making an impact there. You're not just pressing F1, but your work counts. Yeah, and in the beginning, you're going to be shaking all the time. You can see that on my videos where my mouse was shaking and I was just trying, okay, get it slowly towards the drones, pull them out. It gets better over time, but it's really fun. And even if you don't get the kill and you barely make it out, where I have another video for you in a minute, it's still really fun to do that. The thing about funding itself, I haven't been able to really pull that off yet. I would say I made about, in the last month, about 800 to 900 million in loot, which were mostly due to that one Loki, which was super blinky. Usually from a kill, you get maybe 20, 30 million in loot. Sometimes you get more, up to 200 million, which can sometimes be the case with Ishtars. We found a couple Ishtars that had shield boosters, which were worth 60 million each. So that's about the range you're looking at. Getting loot home afterwards. One thing you can do is maybe you find blue citadels where you can drop it and then asset safety at home. If you haven't traveled too far, you can just travel back. One thing you can also do is use alts in interceptors to go speedy towards you, pick up the really expensive good loot. For example, when you find some Kaldari Navy warp disruptor that's worth 200, 300 million, you want to pick that a speedy and safe way out. But so far, it hasn't really been funding itself because I'm still losing expensive ships. But yeah, I think you can fit an Ares, that's the Galente interceptor, with, I'm not sure if it's still sub 2 seconds a line, but I got it to a cargo of 140 cubic meters. So you're able to ship in new ammo, new drugs, new nanite repair paste, maybe 1 or 2 cap boosters, and ship out other loot back home. And if you're not good at multi-boxing and fighting all the time, you can just cloak up your ship that's on deep in space and then focus your time on bringing in that interceptor. It's also possible to do that on one account. So you can log off that hunting ship, then bring in the other ships on your account, jettison the loot, and pick it up with the other chart. Because when you jettison something, it stays in space, I think, for 2 hours. Which is plenty enough for relogging. But yeah, definitely loot. Sometimes there's really juicy stuff in there. Alright, so I wanted to show you a video where I nearly die. That's the name. So in this video, I've been trying to engage a Myrmidon, and it reacted quite well. It was able to shoot back and eventually punch me out again. As you can see on the left side, I prepared my drugs. Eventually, I forgot to take them. So in here, I've been warping on the Myrmidon, landing rather nicely. So I was able to align properly to get the bomb in a proper direction. So you can see us both aligning towards the same direction so that he will eventually end up in the blast radius of the bomb. See, he's pretty much going there. And at one point then I decide to decloak and launch the bomb. And here it's also good to know the range of your missiles. I think the torpedoes here have 48 kilometers. When you go with rapid light missile launchers, they're 40k something. That's good to know because you can pull back a little bit and prepare to warp out should you need it. And you'll see in this video that I at one point decide, okay, I have to align out and then jam the warp out button. And you'll see it will get close. So in here, he's still reading and doesn't really realize what's going on. He was probably locking me up. And once he locked me up, he sent his drones over to me, which then pretty much wrecked me. So I've seen there was a lot of damage taken. He was holding pretty well in armor. So I decided, hey, I need to get out. And now I start pushing that warp out button once I get lower. Might have been able to kill him, I don't know. And right now I was like, okay, fuck, I need to get out. And because I was pre-aligning somewhere while being in a range where I was still able to shoot him, I could continue this fight while keeping myself safe. And as I said before, rather stay safe than losing 2 legions a day.
Question.
Yo, go for it.
You said something about asset safety to home. What is that? How do you do that?
CCB introduced something with citadels that is called asset safety. So if your citadel gets destroyed or something, the assets that were inside that citadel get pushed into the next low-sec system. You can also use that when you have assets somewhere really deep in space. For example, you did a hunting run, you recovered some nice loot. Then you can dock at that particular citadel, and I think also remotely you can push those assets into asset safety. And at that point, they will be locked up for, I think, a week or 2 or 3 weeks until they get released. Once you release them, you have to pay a little fee, but see it as a free and secure hauling fee, which CCP does for you. Then those asset safety reps will end up at a low-sec station where you have to pick it up. But getting it from low-sec to high-sec and into a hub is, in my opinion, easier than taking it from the outer edges of New Eden. I don't know by heart right now how to put something into asset safety remotely. We can see if I'm able to do that in my personal assets. In here. You can right-click in your personal assets on any citadel, not on the items itself, and then you can say move all items to asset safety. And that then will trigger, let's see what it does. Yep, and here I'll say, yep, I definitely want to do that. And they can be delivered within the same system after 5 days. For our case, we'll be looking at the after 20 days to a nearby station, which is usually low-sec. Here I say, okay, I decide I want to move that into asset safety. And we should later then see that pop up here under safety. Remind me to look into that before we wrap up the class. All right, so one more thing. We were talking a lot about scouting and finding targets. When you're doing that a bit, you can also consider flying with Bombers Bar. They always need scouts, someone to help them find targets. It might get a bit more difficult now with the Sino changes, but we'll see how that turns out. Yeah, definitely consider flying with them if you enjoy this kind of playstyle. As we've also seen, you can look into hunting hunters themselves, like setting up traps. Maybe if you just want to stay in here, put out a super hull-tanked Vexer or something that's not really expensive and wait for other people to come in and then kill them yourself. And what you can also do is go for bot hunting. If you are doing your blackout hunting and you see someone is totally behaving like bot. I had an example where there were 4 oracles. I killed off one after the other. And then at the end, there were 4 pods warping from anomaly to anomaly and so on. You can keep an eye on them because usually they don't stop at the moment you kill them, but they continue. And even if you report them, sometimes it takes a lot of time for them actually to be banned from EVE. So you can do 2 things. Check the systems where they have been at the same day and time. Someone again, I had some targets that I still have to revisit up in Cobalt Edge because they were pretty reliably ratting there every Sunday evening. You can use locator agents or people who have access to locator agents to figure out if they moved somewhere else. And you can remember the name.
Locator agents?
Yes, locator agents. There are certain agents in EVE that you can ask about the whereabouts of someone, and they will tell you with a certain precision if they're in a certain system or if they are not in New Eden at all or so. They won't tell you if that character is online, But what you can do is when you remember the name of that character you're trying to kill again, is invite them to fleet. Because at that moment, Eve will tell you if they're offline or if they just reject your invite, or even join your fleet maybe. But those are two things to check if someone is online and where someone is. And then you can just go kill them again and again and again and again. And when you see someone clearly behaving like a bot, go report them. You can do that rather easily. I'll show it in here. So you show the info of someone, and in the left-hand and in here in the left-hand corner, you can then go to the bottom and say report as bot. Doesn't really happen that often. I just had 3 or 4 guys who I reported because they were so clearly not being human at all. All right, that's all I have for you now. Any questions so far, or any more questions?
Could it be worth using on low keys or any tech-free cruisers using a a Federation scram? So it has a 3 points of scram and more range. So maybe you could get a kill on stabilized fittings as well.
Yes, you can definitely upgrade into blingier stuff. So far, I decided against using blingier stuff because I'm still regularly losing my ships. I had 1 or 2 losses where I've been using blingier modules, and I didn't see a lot of justification for me using them yet. But eventually, yes, once you feel comfortable, upgrade into blingier stuff that give you more attack potential. I think you can... Legion, I have seen loss mails where it went up to 2 billion or so, which was really good. It was going 2.6k with an afterburner, which outruns Sabers. A huge point, lots of damage potential. Do that once you get comfortable with the ship. When you're not yet comfortable, when you're flying the low key for the first time, I wouldn't suggest blinging it out, because you're really probably going to lose it.
I see.
Any other questions? All right. I'm looking again at the asset safety in here. I currently have to wait 20 days and it will automatically get delivered to that low sec station. I think after 5 days in here, the deliver to option would appear and we could move it within system. But usually when you're hunting somewhere on the outskirts of Eve, you don't want to deliver it within system, but actually back to low sec. Once it is in asset safety, you can't just take it out of asset safety again. You have to wait that time.